First off, congratulations on making it this far, and welcome to part 4 of my arcade building series here on Signal Ridge. Today I'm going to show you how to add the finishing touches that will make your arcade look as professional as possible. As proof of this, I give you Exhibit A, the Sega-cade. We're going to start by talking paint application. As you can see here, this is a fairly minimalist approach. I don't know what you would call this. All you need is painter's tape. So basically what I've done here is I started off with 2 lines and I just kind of made these stripes get narrower towards the top. And it looks fantastic. My first arcade, I did a stencil, and that was kind of complicated and a little cumbersome. And if you're new to this is probably the way to go. Now, I've done it all sorts of ways. I've done, stripes going up to the top. I've done stripes coming off to the side, and it all looks good. If you want to go the extra mile, a really good trick is to use a projector. I did this for Arturo's arcade, if you guys remember that a few videos back. Not everybody has access to a projector, but if you can borrow one from someone, it's really easy to pull off. You just project an image to the side of the arcade and just, you can go in with a pencil after you've primered the cabinet and you can draw everything out. You just can't move the projector because you obviously have to realign the image just right where it was when you started. So that can be a little bit tricky, but it's not that hard. And I'm pretty sure if you can, color inside the lines and trace something on paper, then you're gonna do just fine. I should have stated before you paint the arcade, where we left off last time, there was obviously a lot of, screw holes and everything in our cabinet. So we would need to go over those with spackling first. Once we've done that, and we've sanded that down, then we can apply the primer. You're only gonna need probably 1 to 2 coats of primer. You can also sand the primer if you wish. I typically apply the primer with the smooth to semi-smooth surface rollers, and that gives the cabinet just a little bit of texture, which I actually like. Anyway, you can sand that down if you wish, and then finally you can apply your paint. Now, the higher the sheen that you get, so like high gloss, you're going to see more imperfections on your cabinet. So I would recommend that you go with maybe satin, eggshell, maybe even flat paint. If you do go with flat paint, obviously it's not as durable, but I'm a huge fan of this paint that I just discovered, and it has this scuff defense, even as a flat paint. So for your high traffic areas, like maybe your control panel, I would recommend using this stuff. Maybe even the marquee too, which I've done for both of these. If you get the premium stuff and you pay the premium price, then you're going to get a better product. It all just depends on your budget. Now, this arcade is not the actual arcade that we started building a week ago. This is an arcade that I started building when I was working on John Riggs' Nintendo-cade. But since I just finished it, I thought it might be appropriate to go ahead and use this as an example and show you guys what those finishing touches will look like. Fortunately, I filmed most of what I did for this particular cabinet for you guys. So we're gonna go back in time and I'm gonna walk you through the process. If you guys will remember, this is where we left off last time. Now, instead of focusing on this unit, I'm instead going to pivot to a unit that I've already been working on. But fear not, I'm still going to go over how to do all of this stuff. The pseudo coin door will also be covered. I failed to mention that just now. There's only a few differences between that cabinet and this one thus far. Obviously, the primer has been applied, which has to be an oil-based primer. So you can see there, that's the primer. It has to be oil-based so the MDF doesn't absorb it like it does with water-based paint. It's very crucial that you get that right. So once you've primered the entire cabinet, actually before you even do that, you're going to have to go back with some spackling and fill in all these holes. So you'll have to do that, and then of course sand it down, make it as smooth as possible. You might have to sand it down a couple times and apply primer to it in those spots a couple times and sand it to make it as smooth as possible. So I don't know if you can see right there. See, I need to sand that again. and I went ahead and painted it when I shouldn't have. So I'm gonna try to get that as smooth as possible with a very, very, you know, fine grit sandpaper. So the pseudo coin door will be covered. Also, there's the bottom lip here has a spot for a button to exit out of our games. I will go over installing all of the buttons for the arcade control panel. I also went ahead and put a bottom piece to the marquee. So that was 7 inches, which was about the same as this one here. No 45-degree angle at the back, of course, because you don't need it. You want to make sure that there's plenty of space back here, so should you need to, you can kind of come up through there and reach into here to replace this light or whatever. So make sure that you don't extend this all the way back to the back. That would not be good. The LED light here is a Walmart brand. I failed to mention that in the supplies list, unfortunately. At least I think I did. And it's just this hyper tough 18-inch LED. Don't get the 24-inch because it might not fit. Because I don't know if it's the light itself that's 24 inches or just, you know, or if it's the housing and everything. So get the 18-inch light, it'll be fine. Okay guys, I'm back at my workspace and I've got the print for my marquee. You see here, this is going to be a Sega cab, so I'm very excited about it. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, ever since the Sega Genesis Mini came out. As you can see here, I cut the corners. Now, why did I do that? Well, you'll see on the plexiglass, the corners are cut as well. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? Can you see that? Yeah, there you can see it. So basically, if you think about it, where the router cuts into, see the router cut this was one solid piece of wood, okay? And all I did was I measured the dimensions inside the marquee after the bottom lip was installed. And so once I got the measurements down and I cut the solid piece of wood out, I took a spade bit and I kind of, you know, I figured out, okay, the distance from here to here needs to fit I guess the length of the spade of the router bit, because you want it to cut all the way through, because we're going to slide our marquee artwork and the plexiglass through there. So this actually was just shy of that, so I had to go back with the Dremel tool. So make sure, I think it has to be under 1.5 inches or maybe 1 inch, I can't remember, or about 1 inch. So just make sure that this length from the top to this bottom part is, when you go this way with the router, you can come back through this way and it's going to basically hollow that out. Hopefully you guys know what I mean when I say all that. I'll try to post pictures if I can, because I don't think I took video of this particular marquee. Anyway, so you use a spade bit, cut out 4 holes here, and then you, of course, that gives you access with your where is it? My jigsaw, and you can go back and cut this whole thing out. You'll need to route the entire inside, but only the top on the outside, because for obvious reasons. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the artwork and the plexiglass. And by the way, my artwork was one huge sheet. You can get this this type of print. It's actually meant to be used with the backlit print. It's made of a very special material, so I don't know if you can see it there, but you can use paper. I know Nintendo, he used paper for his Nintendo Switch cabinet that he did a few years back. So, and it looks fine. You might have to tape it in the middle, just use clear tape, and you probably won't see it very, unless you're like really close up to it. But this stuff can get pretty expensive. All of my cabinets, I do, I get a 18 by 24 inch print, and sometimes I can get 2 to 3 of these marquees printed out on that one sheet, but it costs like 40 bucks. So that's up to you guys, whatever you want to do. Now, if your cabinet's bigger width-wise because you used a, 32-inch TV or 36-inch TV or whatever, then obviously your marquee prints are going to be the 36 by 24 or something. Those are like 90 bucks. So You know, I don't recommend it for everybody, but you know, I don't know. It just depends on what you want and what your budget is. So this, what I did is I went ahead and I put the plexiglass on the entire sheet, which is very large. The plexiglass was already cut to go inside here. And again, those corners are cut like that because if you think about it, the router, it's gonna go in, but it doesn't go, it's you know, in a circle. So it comes down like that. So you can't fit the whole piece of plexiglass in there if it's, you know, a 90-degree angle cut. So just keep that in mind if you're having trouble squeezing this plexiglass in here. But as you can see here, the plexiglass will fit. I don't know if you can see that on the camera very well. Sometimes you have to kind of pry it open at the top. And it can be very frustrating to sandwich this in between, but there it is. See? If you can see that. Yeah, you see the ring light, the reflection ring light. So plexiglass is in there. Now, it's easiest to actually take the plexiglass, place it on your marquee artwork, and then slide them in together. So you might want to do that. Unfortunately, I need to clean this off a little bit, wipe it down because, you know, it got a lot of sawdust because I didn't really put anything in it before. So I need to wipe this down, and then I'm going to go ahead and put that together. Dang, that looks good. What y'all think? Pretty rad. And there it is. She looks beautiful. So there's a little bit of space here. Obviously I scuffed up the paint by putting this in there. I still need to anchor it in, so I haven't done that yet. But there's also space in there, so I need to use some caulk and kind of seal up the edges so that the light doesn't come through from the marquee. So ooh, there's a little space there too. It's weird, I can see it better with the camera than I can with my own eye. With my own two eyes. But yeah, looks pretty good. Looks really good with the paint job there. So I'm very happy with it. Okay, so the arcade control panel. As you can see here, I've actually traced the template that I've made from MDF. But what you'll do is you'll find a template online. You can just search, Google search 2-scale printable arcade control panel, something like that. This is one of the first results I found. And you'll want to make sure that the base of your panel is actually wider than your cabinet because it's going to rest on top of the sides there in that front lip that you make. So you'll want to make sure that these holes are going to be, you're going to use your 1 1/8 spade bit to cut those out. But the holes here for the joysticks, those need to be smaller because essentially the joystick doesn't need as much space to move, and you're going to have this little piece of plastic that comes with your kit, and it's going to cover that hole up so long as it, you know, it's not bigger than, I believe, 1 inch. You might even want to go with 3/4 inch spade bit. I think this is a 1 inch. But essentially, yeah, you just want to make sure that that's not exposed when that little piece of plastic moves. But that's pretty much it. These holes here, I just, you know, I placed those there. There wasn't a template that I could find that had the coin button and the start button, so you can just put those wherever you want them. I'm also going to have the exit button, of course, on a different panel, so that's going to be entirely separate of this, but that's pretty much all you need to do. And then of course, I'm going to take my circular saw or my jigsaw, and I'm going to cut this out. And then if you got a drill press, then you'll definitely want to use a drill press. But if you got that spade bit, then you can just use a drill. Just be very careful. I also should mention, you can actually tape this with painter's tape or Scotch tape or whatever. You can tape that to the surface of your panel, and you just drill straight through the paper. And it'll tear a little bit, but it won't be so bad that you can't, you know, that you won't be able to see these targets here. So just kind of do it slowly, carefully, and you should be good. And of course, you'll have 2 different sets, right? Unless you're making a single player arcade cabinet, which I can't imagine you would be doing anyway. But yeah, and that's pretty much that. And then I'll show you guys how to wire it up. I don't know why, but I am never good at applying this stuff. Of course, I took a damp paper towel and I kind of wiped it down a little bit to clean it up, but it doesn't matter anyway. We're gonna paint over it. So I'm gonna use like a sheet of paper to make sure my lines are straight and everything, but should look pretty good once the paint is applied. All right, so here we have the arcade control panel cut out and routed for the team molding. Don't forget about that, very important if you're doing team molding. So got that, I've got my buttons here, my light up buttons. I'm gonna go ahead and take this out. This is the same kit that I posted on Amazon on my first video or second video, tools and materials. So this is what they look like. And as you can see there, you have a pin connector, which is great because it's super simple to hook up. Essentially all you do is just, you plug that in and then you plug the other end into the USB encoder. The USB encoder is this little deal right here, still wrapped up, this thing. So as you can see here, so essentially we're just going to go down the line. These are the 3-pin connectors, so you have room for 12 buttons, and your joystick is going to be the 5-pin connector down here. I'm not really entirely sure what these are for, but they don't come with the kit anyway, so you don't need them. Of course, there's going to be a USB, is it USB type B port here, and essentially what we're going to do is we've got holes that we can screw this into the back of the panel, so we can just put it somewhere down here or up here. I'll show you guys pictures of my previous unit essentially, but the only thing that dictates where this goes is, okay, how much slack do we have in the cords? And also it might be determined by if, that kill switch button, if that's on a different panel, then you want to make sure you have enough room to plug that in as well, which I'm going to do. So I'll show you guys that here in a second. So very simple. The only thing is you'll have to kind of, put this on top of something so that, the bottom isn't resting on a piece of wood or anything. And you're going to come in here. And that's it. You just plug them in and you use these little, that's the screw in right there. And there it is. It's not going anywhere. So I've chosen to go with blue for both sides because Sega Genesis is the theme here. So that's what we're doing. Now for, let's see, where are they? These buttons, these are wired differently. So, but they still have the pin connectors on the end. So I'm going to show you here in a second if I can get these untangled. I'm going to show you where to connect each one of these clips here and which ports. So this is going to be your player buttons or start buttons. So I also set them up for consoles as select and start. So the player buttons are the start buttons and the coin buttons are the select buttons. So You don't have to, of course, these are extra, so if you have the blue buttons, then who cares, right? And I'm pretty sure these actually come with stickers so that you can remove this and actually put a sticker that says coin or start. I can't remember, but I just like different LEDs. So, and my my exit button is also an entirely different switch. It's this little Sanois replacement switch, which I like these buttons a lot better, but they're a lot more expensive. So, but what I did was I kind of used one of these cables. I figured out what was what. Didn't need that cable right there, that pen. And then I hooked it up, and this is going to be my exit switch. But you're not going to do that. That's too complicated. I don't feel like going into that, so it took me a while to figure it out. So you're just going to use your, essentially your blue buttons or red buttons or whatever. If you bought the supplies that I listed previously, then that's what you're going to use, because I did not tell you to buy separate coin buttons. But I'll show you guys a picture of that, what it looks like here in a second. Okay, so here is an example of one of those other types of buttons that you could purchase separately, of course, from the kit that I showed you guys. So essentially what you will do is you'll see there's a black cable, this daisy chain cable. That's your LED power from what I understand. So that goes to the LEDs. So if you can see here, I don't know if you can try to focus that. Oh, it's gonna be impossible. Essentially what you'll have is you'll have these little two prongs that aren't hooked up to the gray box, okay? And you'll have these two, and there will be one that has a positive sign next to it and an arrow. So at least with this kit, so that's where your little daisy chain cable is going to go. Now if you accidentally plug these into the wrong port here, you can just pull on that tab and then pull them out. And then as you can see here, where you have this one that's sticking out slightly, but it's part of that gray box, you're going to connect the yellow cable, and then right here you're going to connect your red cable, if I can get that on there so if you can see that. That's where the gray box is. The two bottom prongs here where the daisy chain cables, and you have your red here where the negative is, and the yellow here with the gray, that internal gray box. Hopefully that's focused enough that you guys can see that. But yeah, that's if you want to wire different color buttons. That's completely up to you. So now what I need to do is go ahead and get the joystick placed into here, which can be a little tricky. Really quickly, I just want to point out that this thing here, this is an extender. It's actually a kit. I purchased 4 of these. So if you set this into your panel, it just depends on what you want. So, but if I set this into my panel, you can see here, not much of it sticks out, okay? So it's very, very shallow, including with, now I don't know if you guys want bat tops or ball tops. I prefer ball tops. Bat tops are more of like an American thing than Japanese. So I believe so. So screw this in here. I mean, even with, of course, that plastic piece would be on top of that. So I guess I gotta show you guys that real quick. So if you cut smaller, see how that's kind of exposed right there on the top? Well, you can't see. But I don't have it centered, so that's why you want to have a smaller hole cut for the joystick there. This is actually not a bad height for the ball top, but it's pretty shallow, so it just depends on what you'd like. I like my ball tops to be slightly higher than this, so just so I like to, I don't know, get a really good grip on there. So most of y'all probably don't care for the extender, but I am going to install the extender so that I just have a little bit more height. So it's gonna be very hard for me to film this at the same time, so I might just cut. But essentially, it doesn't matter which way you think is up or down because you're gonna program it anyway. But essentially, I like it to sit kind of vertically like that inside the panel. So this is what it would look like from the other end. And there's a number of screw holes that you can see here. So if you put your first screw holes in these 4 here, that gives you a little bit of movement to shift up and down like that. So you might want to screw those in first, and then you can kind of, if it's too far down or too far up, you can kind of shift it so that it's perfectly center. You want it to be perfectly center so that this little piece of plastic doesn't, so number one, you have the maximum range of movement, but also so that piece of plastic hides the components inside. So. All right, this part's gonna be a little tricky, so I have to look on the other side to make sure that this is in the center as much as possible, but I also have to make sure that this is straight, because, you know, obviously you don't want it like that because it's gonna mess with you know, the positioning of the joystick and the gameplay. So what I'm using is my speed square. Thank you to the 2 gentlemen who corrected me. I forgot what the hell I called this thing, but yeah. So you can use the speed square and you can kind of line this up so that you know it's straight, but you're gonna have to look on the other end to see, while holding both of these, whether or not it's in the center. So it's very tricky to do. Usually I have to have somebody help me with it, just to keep an eye on the other side while I'm, you know, kind of bolting this down. So I'm not gonna film this part. I'm gonna get my wife in here to help me, and, you know, hopefully we can center this thing, and then I can bolt it down, and then I can start to wire everything else up. And I will also be placing, what do I do with that thing? The USB encoder probably in this general location, because that's what I did on my last unit that I made for John Riggs, if y'all saw his video on his channel. So basically that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna wire that up, and yeah, and then I just gotta do that one more time, and then beyond that, it's just a matter of putting the kill switch in the other panel, and then wiring that up probably on the first player port, which is going to be over here. And then essentially the control panel is done at that point. As you can see, my garage door is shut. It's because it's so hot outside in the direct sunlight that I would rather close my garage door and be in my stuffy garage with a little bit of air coming through my door to the house, but it's not doing any good. So I've got the buttons all wired up, the joysticks are in, I put the little extenders in there too. So everything's good to go. The only matter that's left is attaching the USB encoder. So I need to go ahead and do that and wire up all the buttons. And then essentially we'll be done at that point. Okay guys, so I just wanted to share with you that I've made some progress on the cabinet here. This piece of MDF, of course, is where our TV mount is going to go. It's very simple to do. You just measure the inside of the cabinet, and yes, you're going to measure it because it might, be a little bit, smaller than what you started out with at the bottom. Just depends. So it could be 1/8, could be 1/16. If it's 1/16, you can probably squeeze it in there. But you still measure it, then cut your MDF to size. Then you'll need a level, and just make sure that it's level with everything else. So check everything else, make sure it checks out. And I say that because the ground you're on in your garage might not be level. So as long as it's consistent with everything else, then you're probably fine. So that's that. Then of course, it goes in there pretty snug, so you can just kind of sit it there. And then, you can come in here with a speed square. Hold on, let me get the speed square. What I do with the speed square? Where is it? I lost it. Oh, here it is. So come in here, and real convenient way to do this is just do like 7 inches from, let's see, flip this around. This is very difficult for me to try and work this camera and do it like that. Really easy way to do it is just, right, with a speed square in, just kind of measure it out. And then on the flip side, just determine, oh, that's where I need to be on that point to put the screws or whatever. That's an easy way to do it. And it shouldn't be too deep in there. 7 inches is probably where it needs to be, because the TV's gonna stick out a little bit, and the TV mount's gonna stick out a bit, and the bezel and plexiglass. So I don't know, it'll probably work out just fine. I recommend that you do not seal those with spackling until you've mounted the TV and the bezel, just to make sure that it checks out, that it works. So make sure you do that. And I think that's about all I wanted to cover for the moment. I'm gonna go grab some T-molding, and I'm going to show you guys how to put that, because it can be kind of tricky. It's a really tight fit. I'm gonna show you how to apply the T-molding to the parts of your cabinet. So I'm gonna do that now. My family decided to bombard me with attention, so when I'm trying to film, all this is going on. Anyways, the point is, this is a great TV. I forgot what it's called because it distracted me. It's a great TV mount. It's $10 at Walmart. It's awesome. Anyways. Y'all done with your dance party?
Yes.
All right. So I'm gonna mount this up. You ready? Let's go. So what I've done there is I've drilled several holes just in case I mount the TV and it's too low, it's too high, whatever, just to make sure that I get it just right. So now all I gotta do is just screw this into the panel. Here's a great TV, by the way. It's Best Buy's brand insignia. It's a 24-inch LED TV, 24 inches, obviously diagonal because that's how you measure them. But it fits perfectly in this space, and it works really well for an arcade of this size at 24 inches within the cab. So. Got it out of the package, time to mount it. I think that's about the right height that I want, so I think I'm going to keep it there. There's a bolt in the back that goes down through the TV to kind of keep the TV mount anchored to the panel mount, so the wall mount, and it will kind of keep it together, but it should be fine even without that little bolt. But yeah, so now we need to talk about the bezel. Now, the Elmer's poster board that I told you to get is the bezel, okay? And the inside of the trifold, basically what we're going to do is we're going to cut this at 24 inches. So wherever 24 inches is, we're cutting all this off. But we're going to keep the folds here on the top and the bottom, and I'm going to explain why. We might cut them a little bit shorter, but we definitely want those folds there. So here the bezel is placed within the cabinet. Of course, the TV's behind it. So we need to make the cutout for the TV, which should be fairly easy. But you see, there's a ton of this bezel left over. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to cut enough of it so that it rests on that top lip there, so I can fit it in there and fold it back. And then down here at the bottom, essentially the same thing. I want enough of it to rest down here underneath you know, where that little hole was. And yeah, that way it can just kind of sit there, and then the plexiglass will rest on top of here, essentially. So, and this is perfect. This is 24 inches exactly from here down to this fold. So the plexiglass should fit in there nicely at 24 by 24. I went ahead, I don't know if you can see there, but I did add a panel to the bottom of this, and you can see there are 2 screw holes right there and there. Basically the reason I did this is just to give the bezel, once I fold it back, I cut off a substantial part of the bezel, but it just gives the bezel something to kind of rest on. It doesn't necessarily need it because I'm also going to, I don't know if you can see, but there's some light coming through. So what I'm going to do, there's a substantial amount coming from that side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use black duct tape, and I'm going to go from the back and tape that. But that's after I have everything set exactly the way I want. So that's very important. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead, and I also cut a lot off the top here. I need to paint that. I didn't foresee that that would actually be exposed, so I will have to paint over that. But that's fine because I got to do a ton of touch-up paint anyway. Oh, by the way, so the marquee, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I just noticed. So in order to mount this in, I went through here into the marquee wood. So, and I also did it from the top. So instead of from, let's say, the side. You could do it either way, doesn't matter. But I just, you know, right here, there's no plexiglass, like it ends right there. So I'm not going to, you know, push the plexiglass or crack it or anything. So whereas coming from this end, I still don't think I'd hit the plexiglass, but I don't know. So yeah, if you're wondering how to put the marquee in there, that's how you do that. I still need to paint the caulk. I haven't done that yet. You know, I'm just gonna do all the paint at once, all the cleanup paint. I need to put the images on the bezel now that I've, see that it fits and it works well. So I'm going to do that now, and then I'm going to cut the plexiglass, which I failed to do yesterday. So I'm gonna cut the plexiglass, and yeah, and I'll put those box art images up there, and then we'll be done. All right, so here I've got my artwork, my game artwork that I'm going to paste on the bezel. I've actually already pasted these two. But what I do is I line them up first to see how many will fit. And then, I try to keep them in the same location. I'll flip one over, apply some Elmer's glue stick to it, and then put it back in where it was. That way, I don't kind of, go off the bezel or, mess up the order of the pictures. So these here, I'm going to glue on the bottom, and those will be glued to the top. The reason for this is because I know for a lot of people in Europe and elsewhere, the Sega Genesis wasn't known as the Sega Genesis, it was known as the Mega Drive. So, especially in online communities, when people talk about retro gaming, they will often refer to the Genesis as the Mega Drive because of their region. So, I thought I'd show some, respect, pay homage to that. So, my wife is probably angry with me because I've been taking over the dining room. Anyways, this is a sheet of plexiglass that we are going to put over the bezel. Now, this piece of wood behind it is measured at just shy of 24 inches. So I could line up the plexiglass on the end here and then, clamp it down, and then put another piece of wood on top of here, clamp that down to sandwich the plexiglass in between to make my cut with my acrylic cutting tool. So I could do that, but you guys, it doesn't really matter. If you wanted to just sandwich this between, like let's say this wood wasn't measured what it needed to be, you could still, it's the same concept. You just measure from the end of the plexiglass to wherever, 24 inches is the inside of the cab, should be, measure it again. And then you could just use an X-Acto knife like this, and you could just very carefully etch in a line at that measurement. The reason I say that is because a pencil's not gonna obviously mark on there. So you could use a marker, but I would use a very fine tip marker. And even then it might kind of smudge off. So anyways, so you could do that. This plexiglass does come with a thin film. Now, unfortunately, I had to remove the film that was on this sheet of plexiglass because the batch that I had, one of them had like a bunch of scratches. And so I went ahead and I just removed the film to check the plexiglass in its entirety. Not sure what went wrong there, but I would advise you keep the film on so that way you protect it against any scuffs while you're working with it. So, but it's fine. The rest of the plexiglass is fine. There's just a crack here and a crack, or you probably can't even see it. The rest of the plexiglass is from here, there to that side is good. Okay, so what you're gonna wanna do is, if you can see this knife, you're not gonna score with this flat edge here, okay? You're gonna score with the very corner of this blade. So kind of like that. And I'm gonna go down and I'm gonna go all the way across, and you'll see little swirly things of plastic coming off. And probably with the thin Hobby Lobby plexiglass, it's probably going to be able to bend and snap at about 3 or 4 scores. You can feel it kind of cracking if you go much further than that, but it should be fine. Now if you got like the Hobby Lobby or the Home Depot plexiglass that I said you probably shouldn't get because it's thicker and a lot more expensive, then obviously it's going to take more effort to score the acrylic sheet. So here we go. And follow all the way through. Don't lift up on the scoring knife. Go corner to corner. Not the most pleasant sound to hear. I'm gonna go one more time and then we're probably good. Let's see. Maybe we should go one more time. That's probably there it is. Even cut except for this little corner here, so I just gotta go back, score that a few more times, and then snap that off. And come in from the opposite end, and then just bend it. Okay, we're done. So, not as smooth as the other side, so I'm probably gonna score it one more time. A little bit of the edge here that's left. Now I should mention at Home Depot, if you do get their plexiglass, you can have them cut the plexiglass to specific dimensions that you ask. It just depends if their cutting machine is actually operable. So both the Home Depots near me did not have machines that were operable. So now you may want to use this opportunity to wipe down the plexiglass, you know, because it might have any number of things on it. If you have the film on it, you're probably good. But you know, maybe some Windex on both sides, and then you can go ahead and I'll show you. We're going to use some adhesive command strips, and we're going to, they're clear. It's like this little glue stuff, I don't know. And we're going to apply that to the plexiglass and apply the other side to the bezel, so that way the plexiglass will actually stick to the bezel. Okay, as you can see, I've got my plexiglass and my bezel together, and I wanted to show you these command strips that I'm using, these little glue tabs. Basically they look like that. Obviously they come in longer strips, but you know, I like to cut them down so I can use more of them, so I can, you know, stretch it out. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one tab in each corner, so I'll have 4 total, and I'm going to apply that tab to the bezel first. And then once I've got all 4 corners with you know, all 4 glue tabs on the corners, then I'll press the plexiglass into the bezel, and that'll be it. These hold up to 6 pounds, so we're not going to have any problems with the bezel holding the plexiglass into place. It'll be just fine. There you have it, plexiglass is in on the bezel, and now it's time to just put it in the arcade, see how it looks. All right, I wiped down this TV screen one more time, and now I'm going to go ahead and squeeze this thing in there. Oh, I can't get over how good that looks. So it's especially look really good with the marquee all lit up and everything. Can't do it right now though because it'll interfere with the camera and it'll look kind of washed out. You won't actually see the details of it, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I may go ahead and add some kind of support at the bottom of the bezel so it doesn't shift too much. As it stands right now, the bottom panel there is not enough. Plus it's at an angle so the bezel could shift forward a bit. The control panel will keep it from moving a little, but I just to be safe, I'm gonna go ahead and add like a small piece of wood or something there for the bezel to rest on. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. As you can see, I went ahead and put in the supports for the bezel to hold it up. All right, these are the speakers that I'm gonna be using. These were, unfortunately, I didn't have any used speakers flying around because I've already used them for all my other arcades in my house. So these were on clearance, I believe, at Best Buy. They're really good speakers, and one of the reasons I like them is because, and I think I've used these before on one of my other videos, my arcade building video with Ali, if you guys saw that one. I think these were the speakers that I used. But essentially, they have a space between the speaker, the housing of the speaker, and the base. So you see right there, see that? So what we're gonna do, now, it doesn't have to be this way. I've had, speakers that don't have this space, and it's fine. I just drilled straight through the bottom, and I didn't, didn't hit the speaker because it was high enough up here. So you can do that too. I've done that probably 5 or 6 times and never damaged the speaker. Just make sure that the speaker is, considerably higher than the length of your screw that's going to also go through the wood. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these in the corner of the cabinet, right there in the back, kind of facing down a little bit. Of course, but under the side that has the panel that is at an angle. And yeah, I'm just gonna put them in that location. I'm gonna screw through the MDF on the side, and that's it. All right, so here we are. I've got most of the paint touch-ups that I need to finish. I've got those completed. And at this point, I need to wire up my kill switch, which, this is a smaller button, so I had to cut a smaller hole with the spade bit. I used a 1-inch spade bit, I believe. Same spade bit I did for the joysticks here. And I just plugged that in there, and then now I need to go ahead and take the 3-pin plug, and I need to plug that into a remaining spot, which I have plenty, got 4 basically, into first player USB encoder. So basically that would take us back through to the main menu. So if we're using Batocera, it'll take us back to the home menu for Batocera. If we're doing Launchbox, it'll take us back to the front end. Okay, so big fail. I'm not sure what happened, but I accidentally deleted the videos and pictures that I had that pertain to the pseudo coin door. So I'm just gonna go over briefly how I built this. It's very simple. I just cut out a sheet of MDF. I think it was 17 by 17. And I rounded the corners, of course, like I've done on other parts of the cabinet. And I used the spade bit to cut out 4 circles to give my jigsaw access to the inside of this. And then I cut out a little window, essentially. Now I had to use a separate piece of wood, obviously, to make the door that goes on the inside. And that was a lot easier. I just had to make sure that it fit the dimensions. Now you might have to go back with an electric sander and smooth the edges down so it fits kind of snug in there. And then after that, of course, I put the hinges on and I put the barrel bolt on. And then the question was, you know, of course, how to attach that to the cabinet. And if you can see there, there's a little bit of an edge. So the hole was actually smaller than the frame and the door. And that's good because it actually hides any, you know, light coming through, or, you know, you can see gaps in the wood. So you might want to do the same thing. And then of course, attaching it, I attached it with the same MDF screws that I've used for the entire cab. And then I put some drywall spackling over it, sanded it, and painted it so it looks like it's, you know, I mean, you can't really tell that it's screwed into the cabinet, but it is. And that's pretty much it. It's not all that complicated. Just have patience when you're trying to build the thing, and you'll do just fine. That's all from me, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by. Special thanks to all of John Riggs fans out there who came by my channel and shared their love and support for the content that I create. That means the world to me. I cannot tell you how thankful I am to y'all. Might I suggest to anyone who's new to my channel to go through my top 10 lists if you're looking for recommendations on what games to play. I would recommend my Sega Genesis top 10 shoot 'em ups. It's actually a list of 20 games because I broke it down by side scroller shooters and top down shooters. So that'd be a great place to start, and very fitting since I'm sharing my love of the Sega Genesis with y'all. And maybe if some of y'all out there are fans of the immortal John Hancock, y'all can share this with him as well. If I've left anything out, I apologize. It gets kind of overwhelming trying to piece this stuff together, but I do want to get to your questions, so please leave them in the comments section down below. And it just gives me an excuse to do another arcade building video, so that's good. Stick around for more projects. At some point, I want to do a giant wall-mounted Game Boy Advance or a Nintendo Switch. I've seen one of those on the internet. I hope you guys will stick around, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I'll catch you guys next time. I don't know why I always build these things in the middle of July. Well, it's almost August now, actually. It's hot, and it's Texas, so it's even hotter. But I'm making some progress, so that's good. So I built 2 arcades at the same time, and they're almost done. I got the bulk of the work completed. Yeah, it's gonna be awesome once I finish them.